Hello.
Hello. Hello,
Hi.
Jessica. And hello, Saman. First of all,
Yes.
Saman.
Yes.
Saman is joining us from Europe.
Oh my gosh.
Yes. So,
Yes.
Saman, it is very
Very
late for
late.
you. I am so sorry. And I'm going to be sorry for the next couple of sessions because the next couple of sessions are also folks from Europe. And we're just eating it through their Friday, which is, I'm sorry, but
You
thank
can't
you.
do that to Europeans.
Yeah, I know. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for being part of this. This session is all about. Wait, I have a title somewhere. I can bring it up. It's all about. Wait. Ooh, it's all the way down here. Unifying data silos and sharing by connecting and sharing varied data sources of financial services use case. Basically, we're going to be talking about data sharing with Redshift. So before we start talking about those things, Jessica, tell us who
Hey.
you are and what do you do and where do you join us from?
Okay. So hi everybody. I am a partner SA at AWS, and I know we have a lot of different types of SA, but I work with ISV partners specifically in the business application segment, and I support my partners to build exciting solutions. I remember I watched the opening session with Damon, and he was talking about all the different sources that a company can generate from finance, sales, marketing, and that's exactly the type of partners I work with every day. And joining
cool.
from Southern California today, so it's still bright and early and very nice
Okay.
weather.
Excellent.
Sorry, someone.
So Jessica, and you talked about the different types of essays. What's the best type of essay?
Partner SA. I have to stand by it.
Of course. I used to be an essay a long time ago. I used to be something. I was working in Germany where Saman is working. I was a Mittelstand essay, a small to medium business essay. So, yeah. Speaking of essays from Germany, Saman.
Yeah, so first of all, hello everyone. My name is Saman Irfan, and I work as a specialist solutions architect here at AWS in the analytics team. I focuses on data warehousing, like it's my specialty, and today I'm joining from Berlin, Germany. So it's around 12 a.m. in the midnight, and I'm going to sleep right after the session.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
That's
But
perfectly
I respect
fine.
your ability to stay up that
Yeah,
late because
yeah.
I can't do it.
Yeah. But the consolidation is you live in Berlin, which is the best city in the world. So there you go.
Yes, it is. It is.
Absolutely. Thank you both. Thank you both. And also, chat. Feel free to post your questions, ideas, comments to both Jessica and Saman in the chat. We can see them in real time, and we want to chat about it. So, as Carlos says, best stay awake until tomorrow. You know, why go to sleep at all? So, we want to talk about data sharing. Is that correct?
Yes.
Maybe I can first kick off the question. Why data sharing? Why would we share data? What's the point? What kind of data sharing are we talking about, and why should we do it?
So basically, I'll take that question. So like when we talk about data sharing in a general, like not talking about, let's say, today we're talking about Amazon Redshift data sharing, but if we talk about data sharing in general, how we can use this data sharing in our day-to-day life to make informed decisions. Like for example, I love shopping. Okay, so I go to Amazon shops, Amazon store, and when I buy something, I see the reviews where other people are kind of sharing the data and based on their own experiences. So I figure out their data, like okay, they have experienced some product, and based on their data, I make informed decision whether I should buy the product or not. So this is in a journal day-to-day life, like how the data sharing is even impacting our daily life. Now, when we talk about organizations, so data sharing is very important for the organization to make informed business decisions. Okay,
Right.
so it's really important, like because we have different entities in an organizations, like big organizations. So to make informed and clear decision, they want to share the data across different business units. So this is how the data sharing comes in, and it's really important again because as we know that data is kind of bread and butter of organizations today. So
Indeed.
Can I
Indeed.
add
And
something to it?
go,
yeah.
go, Jessica.
Yeah. So I think the reason why we're here and we're talking about a lot is there's a recurring thing of wanting to drive insights from the massive data that we have. But before we even get to that, the first question is how can we access it in a secure and efficient manner? Right, there are a lot of
Absolutely.
ways to do that, and I think about it from two levels. So one is really bringing all the data from different sources together, so you have a single pane of glass, and the second part of it is sharing that data out to different business units based on their needs, and that means different permission or granular access to make sure that it doesn't compromise the data integrity.
So, and this is a good point because we talked about today a lot about getting data, transforming data, doing
Data
data
silos,
silos,
right?
doing magical things with machine learning and whatnot. But we still haven't talked a lot about sharing said data, right? So
Yeah,
how
it's all
can we?
about democratizing your data, right?
Is
And
that
so talk to us a little bit about that and why it's important.
why would we share data?
Do you want to take that question, Jessica?
I'll take my partner Stripe for example. So
Do
if
it.
you don't know who Stripe is or unfamiliar, they produce software and API that allows business to do things like process payments and pay out or operate a online business. So if your company has an e-commerce website or you're building some sort of subscription plan,
Yep.
it's probably Stripe powering the backend billing capability. So if you think about that, it's really important for their customer to have access to that data because they want to understand how their business operates and use that information to drive business growth. And it can be used by different departments. So security team may want to understand risk modeling based on their financial data. Marketing might want to understand how a particular campaign drives sales and customer registration.
Right.
So that's the need for accessing the data really in a lot of example in our everyday today.
And to your point here, Jessica, like, when Stripe has multiple customers, right? We like to talk about gathering data in like a data warehouse and keep it in a data lake or whatever, right? But sometimes your customers need access to their portion of data. So this is where we get to talk about sharing data through a thing like Redshift. So maybe Saman, you can talk to us about how do we do data sharing with Redshift? How do we do
Yes.
proper like data sharing in a data warehouse?
Yeah, so basically the Redshift data sharing is kind of based on RA3 node type, that is our latest generation node type, where we have separate the storage and the compute layers. So basically when we separate the storage and compute layers, it enables us to share that storage layer with different compute clusters. So that is how we have enabled that data sharing concept. If I just quickly share my screen so that
Please go
the
for it.
audience can do that and see just a moment.
As soon as it shows up, we're gonna pop it up on screen here. But yeah,
Yeah.
that's a very important thing. And like I know Stripe, they also do these credit card like little terminals, right? Is that Stripe or is that
Yeah.
Square? Is that Stripe? I used to
They
live in
both do, yeah.
I used to live in Berlin, where Saman lives, and in Berlin had the biggest problem. Nobody ever would accept credit cards, and all of a sudden these little companies started showing up with little small terminals. Wonderful! You can finally pay like you're in the 21st century. So yeah, I love Berlin, but Berlin has this problem with them. So okay, Saman, I see your screen. I can share it right
Yeah.
now. Okay.
Yeah, sure.
Well, can you please zoom into that? There we go. Cool.
Oh, beautiful.
Yes, yes. Yeah. So basically, this is kind of, I'm sharing the workshop on data sharing that we have just created, seamless data sharing using Amazon Redshift. It's a
Okay.
public
Nice.
workshop, so the audience can access it later and perform and see how we can seamlessly share data across different Redshift clusters and enable different use cases that we will be also talking through. So basically, this is kind of, if you see here, this is how we have enabled the data sharing in Amazon Redshift. Is that in this diagram, you can see that we have both the producer and the consumer clusters on RA3 node type. So this is something that needs to be considered when you want to enable the data sharing. So here you can see that with RA3 node type, we have the compute layer and then we have the storage layer, which is Amazon Redshift Managed Storage.
Right.
So
Okay.
the producer cluster is kind of producing the data, and the data is kind of getting stored to Amazon Redshift Managed Storage, and consumer cluster can read that shared data. Okay, and this is live data sharing. It's not something that you have to wait for, like in the previous data sharing, like you have to wait for the nightly ETL job to finish to get your data. So it's not something like that. The data is transactionally consistent. You have
Yeah.
live access to the data, and the consumer cluster. You can have many consumer clusters. Like in this diagram, I'm just here showing one
Right.
consumer cluster, but yeah, this is how it works. And it enables, again, multiple use cases. Here we can see that how we can isolate the workloads. We can build the producer and consumer cluster as per their own compute requirements.
Right. And
So
would you, so now I see here like a single producer cluster and a bunch of consumer clusters. Can we have multiple producer clusters connected to the same way to share live data to a bunch of consumer
yes,
ones?
yes, exactly. So basically, this consumer cluster can be a producer cluster and
Right.
share the data in a bidirectional way. So that's
Okay.
totally possible. So yeah.
And then can you talk us through what the leader nodes do and how they function in this architectural diagram?
Yeah, so basically a leader node is something like, even if we talk about the Redshift architecture, so we have a leader node and then we have a compute node, okay? So a leader node is something that does the pre-processing of the query, caching of the queries and these things, and then the compute nodes actually performs the actual work, because Redshift is an MPP system. If we talk here about the leader node, so leader node is something that is kind of in this whole data sharing scenario, leader node is something that holds the metadata information about all the data that is stored here. Okay, so these two clusters are kind of independent of each other, but like leader node contains the metadata information about the data storage. So consumer cluster do read the data about this metadata from this producer leader node.
Cool,
Okay.
cool.
And when we talk about Redshift clusters, right, and we
Yeah.
talk about like business data sharing, and do you think it makes sense for each line of business or each like department or organization within a big organization to have their own Redshift cluster, or do we just have one big one where we store all the stuff there? My understanding is with this wonderful Redshift data sharing, you can have each line of business can have their own thing.
So basically, this is one very good use case that can be enabled with the data sharing. So previously, what organizations again used to have is that maybe have one big Redshift clusters and have all kind of your workloads hitting that Redshift cluster,
Yeah.
which had some problems and challenges in a sense that if the organization needs to perform a chargeback to the
Right.
different line of business, then it's not that easy.
Right.
But like if we talk about this Amazon Redshift data sharing use cases, so one of the use cases to enable cross collaboration.
Cool.
And here you can see in here that we can have each of our business units can have different Redshift clusters, and as per the need, they can share the data in a bidirectional way. Okay, so the data can be shared across the Redshift clusters. What this actually enables is that first we have an isolation in a terms that finance team can spin up the Redshift cluster as per their own utilization, as per their own usage. Okay, independent of what marketing team utilization is,
Right.
and this also enables a chargeback model that
Right.
finance team will be charged for their own Redshift cluster, marketing team will be charged for their own Redshift cluster. So, which actually simplifies the whole concept of like this whole thing.
Of course.
So,
Of course. Like when we get to that scale, you want to try to
yes,
simplify it as much as possible.
And
Now, is it?
building your own chargeback models is not an easy task at all. I think those of us who've been through that process know that that can be really challenging. So it's very cool that this is solved in a way that is secure, operationally
Yeah.
compliant for organizations, and also I really like the design of that decoupling of storage and compute. Right.
Of course.
yes,
But this is only available in RE3 nodes, right? Those are the latest
yes.
Redshift. So RE3
Okay.
nodes, not your traditional Redshift clusters. You
good
need
point.
to have to do. This doesn't work on Redshift serverless, my understanding, right? Is that correct?
Yeah, so Redshift serverless has the same kind of, from the architecture perspective, it's the
Okay.
same. The storage and compute layers are different, like separate. So the data can be shared with the Redshift serverless as well.
Okay.
Okay. So yeah, this is possible.
And
Beautiful.
if you're running a older generation of instances, you can migrate into RA3 and take advantage of that for sure.
That's also a factor. You can always migrate. Now, Jessica, I would love to hear a bit more about Stripe. Right? You mentioned something they've done, but what kind of problems do they solve with data sharing? Like, can you give us a concrete example, as much as you can share, of course, something that we can talk about? And we always love to see our customers and partners be successful, but like exactly with this, can you share something?
Yeah, happy to. So Stripe launched a product called Data Pipeline about 2 months ago, and it's
Okay.
exactly built around this Redshift data sharing capability. So if you think about the architecture diagram that Saman was sharing earlier, in that case, Stripe is serving as a single data producer with their Redshift cluster, and their individual customer get their specific data share that is unique for that customer, and they access it from their Redshift environment as the consumer. So the whole product is built around this capability. And I want to say before that, there are always ways for their customers to extract data from Stripe. They either go through a API integration or ETL pipeline that's custom to allow them to access the data. But really, with API integration, for example, you would need to invest the time to build out the integration, first of all. You need to make sure the data are modeled in the right way, and that, specifically with Stripe and same with a lot of other business type of data, it's sensitive, it's confidential, so you need to make sure there's end-to-end
Yes.
encryption in place, so it's secure. And you have to think about the ongoing maintenance when there's new data set being introduced or there's API changes. You have to address that, and you have to think about scale. So those are we talked to a lot of customers. Stripe was developing this product,
Yeah.
understanding if this will be an interest for them, and a lot of them talk about the challenge with maintaining that type of integration. And with data sharing, it's essentially no code. If you look at the workshop, it's very straightforward. And once the data share is created, take Stripe data pipeline, for example, the most time consuming part for them is actually creating the data share and make sure the tables and views are added the way they want it for their customer. And then from that moment, once they authorize the data share to be shared, consumer get it within minutes. So it's that
Beautiful.
simple for them.
And that's very important. Like we built this multi-tenant systems, and we get a lot of their data, so we want to be able to give that data back to our tenants, to the people who are actually going to use it. So I'm happy that Stripe has done that. I actually put a link to the blog post you've written, Jessica, in the chat. So chat, if you want to check out that data pipeline thing with Stripe, it's all there. Now, a wonderful question came in from chat. So this is something we definitely have to look at. When it comes to data sharing, how does data sharing work for external tables using Amazon Redshift Spectrum? This comes from ArmDSG. Thank you, Watch, again, for the wonderful questions. Would you be able to answer this?
Yes. So basically, I was thinking that there might be a question like this because there is something. This question was raised in our internal Slack channels as well, and I was
See?
lucky that I read it. At the moment,
See?
with external tables, like if you have an external table in your, let's say, producer Redshift cluster, at the moment it's not we cannot share that external table with the consumer Redshift cluster.
Okay.
But the pace that we are innovating, it might be possible that we have that capability in the future.
Okay. No, so my understanding, now correct me if I'm wrong, you can connect an S3 bucket, a data in S3 bucket to Redshift cluster, right? You can read.
Yes. Yeah,
So-
exactly. But
So
that external table, like if you have that external table in your producer Redshift cluster where you are reading the data from Amazon S3, okay, like you have created a Spectrum table, that table at the moment cannot be shared with that consumer Redshift cluster.
There we go. Got it.
So
Okay.
I hope
Makes
you
sense.
yeah.
Okay, fair. RMDS, hopefully we answered your question. And we have Carlos C. Rodriguez here saying you can use lake formation to share data.
Yes,
Yes.
that can be used.
That's also an option here as well. So you have a couple of love the presentations. From somebody from Chicago. So there you go. Excellent. It's not done yet. We have not finished the presentation. First of all, this is not a presentation. Tirmaz, does this look like a presentation? We talk to people here.
Thermos seems like
Parrots
one
talk
of my
to us.
friends.
Yep.
See, we have various plushy animals around here. Jessica, there. Whoa! This was not
I
planned
stole
at
my
all.
daughter
This was not
unicorn.
planned.
Dr. Unicorn. So we talk to plushy animals, and some talk back to us as well.
Yeah,
So
this one does.
This one does.
Sophie, gotta love her.
Sophie. But great. No, I mean this is amazing. I think there's a lot of use cases and a lot of important things when it comes to dealing with data sharing. We actually linked the workshop in the chat. I'm actually gonna paste it once again because I don't want it to get lost. But any callouts, Saman or Jessica, for developers, for builders, folks who want to get up and running with data sharing, some pitfalls, something that you should be mindful of when coming into this thing?
So maybe if, I'll share my thoughts that the data sharing is very simple with Redshift. It's secure. There are multiple ways of security is kind of job zero at AWS. So the data sharing is really a secure way. Like there's no question about that. Just again, one consideration that is the fundamental is that the data sharing operates on RA3 node type at the moment, and all the latest features and innovation that we have on Redshift is kind of on RA3 node type because of the architecture. Apart from that, just one thing that that's the question that is asked most of the time is that how the compute work for that producer and consumer Redshift cluster. So the compute is something that consumer Redshift cluster is charged for its own compute, and producer Redshift clusters are charged for its own compute. It's not something like that the consumer will share the compute or extract the compute of the producer cluster. So it's totally separate compute environment for both of them. Yeah. So
which makes sense. Which makes perfect sense because you're just sharing data. You're not sharing compute in this case, right?
Yes, exactly. And just in the workshop, you can check the link for the data sharing consideration, which you can go through, and there are a lot of points in there that you can check. To see that what is the consideration.
I think one other thing it comes up a lot for me when working with Stripe and their customer is that in the case with Stripe, and it's the same if you're doing cross-account data sharing, encryption at rest is a prerequisite for you to use that functionality. You have the option to either enable encryption at start of the creation, or you can modify that afterwards, but it needs to be done. And also generally best practices.
And in the wise words of Werner Vogels, you should always encrypt everything. Just don't even think about not encrypting things. Just do it. Both at rest and in transit. And in transit is by default happening here. We do have a question coming in from chat from Mohig saying, how do you control various access control lists / permissions to access data across?
Perfect question. We were just talking about that a little bit, right?
Yeah, so is there a portal to do this as part of Redshift? How do you actually give people permissions?
So it's a good question, but if you see that even in the lab we are talking about, there's a section for the permission management for the data sharing, and there are different ways that you can manage these access and permissions for these data shares. One of the way is the role-based access controls that we have recently introduced. You can implement that, have that role-based access control in the even on the producer side or at the consumer side, and share the required data with your target users. So
you get the fine-grained permissions, right? So.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
Beautiful.
It's in the permission management.
Check out the workshop. It's in the chat. And also, if you want all the links from today, it's all available in. If you just fill out a small form. If I will do register. If you register, you'll get all the show notes, all the wonderful links, and a bunch of other stuff to your email if you do that stuff. So And
That way you don't have to copy pasta. You can just have it all in your inbox.
Exactly. So, and we have wonderful people working diligently on this right now. Thank you, Esther, if you are hearing this.
Thank you.
So, Saman and Jessica, a couple of last questions for you. I think this is the question I love asking to people, especially Amazonians. If you could push a button right now to add, change, or remove a feature from Redshift data sharing, what would it be? Yes. The tricky question. Go ahead.
Yes, maybe one point from my side. At the moment, what happens is that the producer cluster kinds of own the data. Okay, like the producer cluster is the owner of data. What I would like to see in the future is that we don't have an owner of data. Rather, we have a storage layer, and then we can have multiple compute instances over the top of the data and operating like instead of any one cluster owning the data. So I would like to have a data layer and then have multiple compute instances on the top of that.
Okay, fair. That's an agnostic owner of data. You, Jessica?
I would really like a one-click painless migration because
Wouldn't we all?
That sounds great.
That sounds.
Where do we sign up for that on everything?
Every systems engineer doesn't matter. Migration to anything doesn't matter if it was like one button migrate. Yeah, but actual fair points, right? So having an agnostic data source, let's have multiple like consumers in a single data source, just the data storage layer, and having when you say migrations, my understanding is from non-RE3 to RE3, right? So
correct.
There you go. Cool. Jessica, Saman, any last words? Did we forget to ask you anything?
I think we covered almost everything, but hats off to you both, Energy.
Thank you
guys
so much.
are running amazing show. So yeah, it's really great.
6.5 hours.
Going strong.
Going strong.
Yeah.
And I wish this was for charity. Thank you so much, Saman. Thank you so much, Jessica.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Hey there! Thanks for checking out this video. Remember to give it a like and share with your community. Then hit subscribe and the bell for all the latest content that will help you build on AWS.